So last part we saw the user interface and all that, and now we will start working with our weapons. Now the first thing to do is to actually know what is a weapon, and I do not mean what is a weapon in real life. I mean what is a weapon in the sense of our weapon system and our weapon manager. So we'll go to scripts. Okay, create a new script, weapon, and this, as you can see, it's not a mono behavior, and it's just a simple class that will hold stuff we need to take with us, and we will use this. And let me close some of this since we don't need them. And to use this, we will actually utilize a weapon instance, which this is going to act as a hook that is going to go on top of a game object. So basically, when we want to save a weapon, where of course this everything is going to happen automatically, we're going to have a weapon instance which has the actual instance of the weapon. So this instance is this class, and yeah, and in turn this one also has the weapon stats. The weapon stats can actually be be copied, and we will create instances of the weapon stats. So what you should think about is that this, and actually this will be, let's just say, the default ones, but later on when we have weapon modifications, a mode will come. Well, basically when a character has a weapon, it's going to go and copy this weapon instance from this, okay, and it's going to have it as and save it as a runtime weapon. Now everything that can be overwritten in runtime by a mod or by something else will be also copied to his, he will have on his copy. But whenever we want to take something that is pretty much universal into all the same types of weapons, then we're going to be utilizing the backup. So this is pretty much that has to do with model prefabs, where we need to save them. The weapon ID of course is unique. The pickable prefab ID is also unique. Okay, so this will, some of them will stay the same, and some other ones we could just overwrite them inside on runtime basically. Now the reason why I do this, and I do this as a weapon instance, is because if we make a prefab of this, and the way we are doing it with our new weapon system, let me find weapon. Okay, it's a little bit more intuitive than having it as a scriptable object, or as just saving it into or just serializing it and having it on the disk. Okay, and this is also a little bit less prone to error, since Unity likes to corrupt your scriptable objects. And another one positive of this is that if I want to do any changes directly on the script, so for instance something big, public string test, and save, okay, I do not have to create something else. I do not have to serialize again all my weapons. I just can go into their prefabs, okay, and the new variable will be there without having to worry about reserializing, saving them again, and especially if we have 50 weapons. As you can imagine, it could be a problem to do all that. Okay, so that's why I've just went with prefabs and with an instance. Now let's delete this, we won't need this, and let's dive deep into what the actual weapon is, and basically what every one of these does. Now, weapon ID, okay, our weapon ID, which helps us to identify the weapon inside our resources manager list mostly, And yeah, well, it's mostly done from there, so we can we can go into the inventory of the player and say that we want this and this and this weapon. The model prefab, of course, is the prefab we instantiate. If it has a holster, if it doesn't have a holster, then it will simply disable the game object. Okay, the holster bone is of course on what bone it's going to be parented at. As I said, we only want to worry about the holster bone, since the aiming bone will always be the right hand, unless, and not unless, that is on purpose, in case we want to in case we basically want to set it to switch arms. Okay, you know, in some special forces they are trained to shoot with both hands and stuff like that. Anyway, we start with the right hand, and if you want to mirror it, then you simply take everything we have saved over here and just switch the X. Okay, I don't have it in this one. It's a special case which, yeah, I'm not going to worry about. Holster prefab is if you want to instantiate another model that is not the same as your model prefab. Okay, if you do not have assigned anything over here, then it's just going to take the actual model prefab, or basically the model instance of the character, and place that and use that as a holster and place it under the holster bone. If you do not want to do anything, it will, so you know, you do not want any holster models, then simply untick the house holster. The weapon anim set, it goes directly with the animator. We haven't seen it yet, of course, from the controller. Okay, the way we have set up the animator, if it's 0, will be right for rifles, the animations for rifles, or the animation for pistols. Now the pick ID is, as you can see, the pickup prefab ID. So basically, when you pick up a weapon, you throw another prefab so that it you know, you can pick it up again. The weapon stats, it's all this class, which we will see in a bit. And then we have the model position, model rotation, basically where we are going to save some references that we're going to need for our weapon. Now, in theory, you probably won't even have to go yeah, this will all per weapon should always be the same. So model position, model rotation, okay, model scale, this has to do with the visual part. Again, holster position, holster rotation, holster scale is the same. Now, in a perfect world, for every type of weapon, for either rifles or pistol, okay, we will have this will be the same. However, because if you do not have dedicated modelers to make sure that the weapons are always at the same position, okay, they have the same pivots and all stuff like that, then you will have a problem. So yeah, you wouldn't need any of this, or you can do them unique for only rifles and pistols. However, because there is a slim chance that you will have dedicated modelers, okay, then we will simply save each one of these unique per weapon. And yeah, on our constructor, we're basically going to use to instantiate basically a new weapon stats. And yeah, let's see the weapon stats. Okay, this has to do with tweaking and mostly variables. So magazine bullets, I think you can basically understand this. Carry bullets, maximum carry bullets, if you want infinite ammo, maybe for debugging purposes. Camera handle will directly influence how fast you can turn and move. Okay, turn speed controller for basically how fast the controller can rotate. These are the values I'm using. If you want to tweak them, then by all means be my guest. The FPS camera offset is when you are going on to the FPS mode, is basically the position the FPS camera is going to have I just have a value over here so that it's not starts at 0, but this just gets overwritten above when we save a weapon into the weapon creator. And the ID, and I think, do we actually need this? Because I don't think we need this. Yeah, we do not need this, so I'm going to delete this one. So the idea was that you can have multiple weapon stats that has to do with modifications, but I thought of a different way to do it, so I just purged it and deleted it basically. And we have again fire rate, camera recoil Y and X is the actual recoil, and it's just what we add, or the offset we add on our camera. Okay, the fire rate, and pivot offset is the offset of the pivot, is basically where the aim guide sits. Offset Y scale, Z scale. Okay, with this has to do with the angle compensation. So when it aims up, he doesn't have the weapon right up on his face. You will see where this is working when we actually work with the actual implementation of the weapon system. And animation curves, just for the procedural recoil. And here is where we're actually going to save our references that has to do with the IK. So all of this they do not really have to be shown in the inspector. Okay, but however, if you want to be saving, and making tests, and you want to make sure that positions update, then just comment this or comment this. Okay, and I think this is also not needed. And use head target, I left it in because it has to do with the IK handler. However, I just left it always as open, so keep that in mind. So you might not even need this. However, there might be a chance that you do not want to use head target. Okay, so there's that. You probably want to use a head target unless you have correct animations. But yeah, even then, it might not look correct on the weapon, so yeah, just leave it open and you'll be fine. And this is where we are going to save stuff. Okay, head target position, make hand. This basically has to do with the local position of the IK targets. Instead of having, if you remember on the previous series, we had like for each weapon we have different IK targets basically. In this one we only have one set of IK targets, and we're simply going to change their local positions. Okay, so basically we want positions, rotations. Okay, position name and rotation name is we're not using them, however we can still save them, and that has to do with the IK saving positions that we've seen on the previous, on the how to set up a new weapon system. This basically correlates to how you actually want to handle it, because when I was going from the offhand position idle to aim, okay, when there was a little bit of a clamp that I didn't like, so I just simply went with using the offhand position idle and rotation idle everywhere. Okay, this is my preference. If you want to change that, then by all means, you might of course come think of something better than what I did with the positions over here. Anyway, that's what I'm doing. If you want to do something else, then of course try to do it. Okay, so these are basically the same. This we will not be using them, however we can still save them. And the aim guide offset is again has to do with the pivot. And the muzzle, we actually don't need this, I believe. Yeah, we won't need this. We are going to use though the bullet spawn position. Bullet spawn position is where the bullet starts to from. In right now we're only doing a raycast, okay, and from that raycast to where the camera is looking. Load bullets is just a function that it adds a value, and if it's higher than the maximum carry bullets, then it's going to assign the maximum. And all this, okay, magazine bullets, current carry bullets, maximum carry bullets can be just overwritten by a modification later, which we're going to see that later. Like for example, magazine bullets will depend. If you want to have a magazine mode that has more bullets, then you can simply do it. And yeah, so this is the setup for our weapons. Basically this is what we need to recreate a weapon. And now let's see the statics. The statics we've seen also on the third person controller, and basically it will have as a way both to store hashtags. Okay, so for example, instead of writing every frame a new horizontal, because when you create and when you use a string like this inside the update loop, yeah, it allocates more memory than you need to use. So the easiest way to fix that is simply creating a public static string, okay, horizontal, and use this one. Instead of just writing horizontal, call it from over here. And that has to do with everything. And if you see somewhere in my code that I switch it for this, is I was lazy to come in here and create a new public static string and stuff like that. Okay, so this is for this one. The other thing we can also add is variables that has to do with tweaking. So instead of going into every script and trying to find try to tweak values, we can also store them over here, and if we want to change them, then we can come over here and tweak them and find them in here. Again, if you find somewhere that in my script that I forgot, I just hardcode the value, then that means I was lazy to come in here and add a new one. Okay, it's not something necessarily needed, it's just a preference. Coroutine names, and I think, yeah, this is just again with a string, and this is just a delay switch time. I think we use this when we either switching weapons or reloading. We're going to see this in a bit. And we also seen this in the advanced third person controller, which basically we pass an enum type and it returns us the integer that has to do with the animator. Okay, this going to come into play into later. But what I want you to see right now is this one, which basically copies one weapon stats from one instance to the other. Okay, this will be ref boolean weapon stats to 2, and basically what it does is goes from one weapon and copies it to the other. So for each variable we're going to be passing them from 1 to 1. Okay, and this will has to do with instancing or cloning basically our instances. And yeah, so if you have a problem that something doesn't update correctly, then that means you might have not added it over here, which is going to happen more than you believe. So okay, and this is also a static variable or static function. That means that we can simply call it from anywhere we want, simply by using statics dot copy weapon stats from weapon instance. Okay, and again for the items will be the same. Okay, we're going to see the items on their own video probably, and unless there's enough time, we might see them also in this one. And just a way to get a random float between min and max. Okay, and the enums for this. So this is basically the whole reason for having a static is so that having a static class so that we can reuse stuff without having to worry where they are basically. And you can see that it doesn't derive from mono behavior, which means that it doesn't need to doesn't need to even be inside any scene or a game object. So now that we've seen all of this, let's go to the weapon creator. So since weapon creator, which is a weapon creator is basically just an empty scene which just has the weapon creator game object and another game object which is called weapon creator references. Okay, yeah, you can have a directional light or not, doesn't matter. Now, the whole idea of this is to basically populate the stuff we've just seen inside the weapon, to take references from things we have inside this scene and just store them in there without having to go copy pasting them. Okay, and this will come into play with using the weapon creator. So the weapon creator again is just a game object which has the weapon creator scene script and a weapon instance of this. And this weapon instance will help us to basically initialize something in here. Not something, the weapon in here, and that will when we save the weapon we will get another game object like this which has weapon instances and everything we see over here. Okay, and we can go and tweak everything we want, like recall Y and Z and angular X and all of these. Okay, and then of course make it a prefab and then go and make it add it into the resources manager with the appropriate rig name and stuff like that. So let's see this, but before we see the actual weapon creator, let's see the weapon creator references, which is just a placeholder to save references we have into our scene. Okay, an array of models. We need just 2 game objects. Animator override controllers has to do with the animators that these 2 guys have. Okay, so one of them just has an animation called rifle aiming forward and the other guy just has the idle. However, it has an animation layer on top of this which has rifle and a pistol idle, and depending on what we choose, on what weapon we want to set up, then it will update both of these animators. Okay, I'm going to add the animators not only for this scene, everything inside in the description, so check for links there. Okay, and the animator override controller is basically what you can assign, as the name says. It basically overrides the animator on runtime. Okay, and to create one, you simply go create animator override controller. You get this and you just assign as you will regularly the controller. Okay, nothing special, it's just Unity's API that works this way. And yeah, let's go back. Animator editor is a script that actually updates the animator in here. IK parents, okay, IK handles, we need 4 of each. Secondary parent, secondary IKs, model instance, secondary model instance, holder model instance, hit target, aim guide, bullet spawner, and FPS camera placer. Okay, and it's also a singleton. If the singleton is null, then it's going to reassign it just in case, because the editor, working inside the editor, the calls work a little bit differently, especially when you save or when you change the scenes. So we need to make sure some of these work. Okay, these are the references what we're going to need. And yeah, let's see what these guys actually have on them. And they actually have the bone helpers, which is a script that places dummy game objects on bones that we're using. So for example, the right hand, of course, the left hand if we need it, and the holes are bones. And the animator editor is what updates this inside the editor. Let's see the bone helpers. The bone helpers, we're going to actually use them inside our own game, not just the editor. So it's a really helpful script. It has a list of bones, okay, and the animator. When we initialize it, basically we're using the animator, and when we are going to want to update them, okay, we just take this, animator equals null, get component animator, okay, and for each bone we have, it's going to basically look for the helper first, and actually this has to do with this. Okay, so basically the helper is just a transform which is assigned over here and what bone to follow. So if it doesn't find any helper, then it's going to try and find it. Simple as that. In case, you know, something got deleted or something that wasn't working correctly. And it's going to basically copy the position and the rotation of the bone we get from the animator. Place helper on bone does exactly the same. Okay, just if we need to only do it once instead of running an update. Return helper is going to go and it's basically going to look any helper you have inside of for loop. Okay, and it's going to try and find inside your helper list if you actually have the same bone. Okay, and it's going to return you the helper. If it doesn't find one though, then it's going to create a new class of the bone helper. It's going to assign the bone, the target bone. It's going to create a new game object, which is a new transform for the game object, or a new transform for the helper. Okay, change the name just for for our sake, and parent it under this transform, and you can reset the local position. All your angles, local scale, and set it as set the transform on the helper, from the newly created game object, add it into our helper list. So next time we won't be creating a new helper, we're simply going to reusing the one we have created over here. Okay, and then return basically the helper. Now, if we have actually found a helper, however, the helper we have found, or the helper class inside the list we have found, as you can see, we do not check if the transform is assigned. We only check if there is an entry without human body bone inside our list. So we need to make sure that we also have a transform assigned, and we do this over here. Just in case, we delete a character and we need to remake basically our helpers. Okay, then we check for the helper, and if it's the actual transform is null, then we simply reinitializing or creating a new game object to serve as our transform, and then we simply return the helper. Now, parent all helpers, what it's going to do is parent its helper under their bones, basically. Instead of using the tick to update its position, their position and rotation, we simply parent them under the bone and zero in both the local position and the local rotation. Okay, so basically this and this kind of work the same way. However, the this might not always work that great with when we are aiming. Okay, so yeah, either choose one of these, and I went with this in the main menu, and I went with this inside the actual game, and we will see why. So that's it for the bone helpers. Let's see the animator editor. Animator editor is a script that is going to execute in edit mode, and you can see that we need an if statement, of course, that it's only going to run the script if it's inside the Unity editor, and we need it has its own namespace, okay, and we're going to need some stuff from the third person controller, probably, we have a few references, okay, enable a key. You shouldn't really touch any of this. They should be true by default. If they aren't, then by all means, then just, make them. Let's just make sure. Okay, bone helpers is the script we have seen. The animator is the actual animator we have. Right hand target, left hand target, shoulder head target, all of this we're going to create them automatically. And the weapon creator references has to do with a singleton instead of reusing this all the time. And we just check, as you can see, that if any of these are null, then we simply reinitialize them. And for our characters to actually play the animation, we need to use update and pass a value. And the value, of course, is 0, and that means it's going to make them play the first animation, the first frame of the animation you see over here. Okay, if again bone helpers are null, then it's going to go and fix them, and it's going to update the bone helpers also, and that is inside the update. On animator move, it's going to fix the shoulder position. Okay, of course it's going to first look if the animator is assigned or not. And here's the first tricky part we're going to do is this finds the pivot, the aim guide basically, and places it on top of the correct position. Okay, the aim guide, it's not the actual, the aim guide is what we can move. What actually places is this, the IK shoulder helper, and if you can see that if I try to move this, okay, I cannot actually move it because we hard code its position. If I want to actually move the pivot though, I'm going to use this, the aim guide, and the reason for that is what basically does, it takes it subtracts the position of the aim guide from the character's shoulder position, and it applies it as an offset. So basically it just does what I just said, subtracts the position this thing has from the offset from the shoulder, and that offset is where it goes and applies this position. Okay, simple enough. We just have a few checks to make sure that everything works and we do not get errors. And here's the offset position, which means from our weapon references guide, we have our aim guide, we subtract this position from our own animation shoulder position, and the position we are going to have the shoulder game object, which has all our IK and everything inside, will be our own anim shoulder position plus the offset position we have created over here. And then we're going to hard code to look at basically towards the north from its own shoulder position, because we always want to make sure this looks for the weapon creator though. Okay, so inside the actual game it's going to be a little bit different. So what we need is, we always want to make sure it looks that way, it looks positive on the Z. And then we also make the aim guide always look towards the same position, and this only have to do with a weapon creator, of course. Okay, play animation, we pass an integer and it will either play the rifle or the pistol. Now I do not have this inside the statics because it doesn't matter, we are inside the editor, this will never run inside the actual game. Okay, so it doesn't matter, you can be messy with this, and it's just going to play the animation. On animator, okay, if there is a head target, then it's going to enable it. Okay, these are the float, the values we're using. 0, either 1 or 0 if we have it enabled. Body is 0, which is the important thing over here, because we want to save a lot of values. We want to have the body position at 0. Inside the actual game, we're going to actually add a little bit of weight in the body, okay? And but not so much, because everything just works fine. Okay, so everything else is hard-coded to 1. And we set the look at position to our head target. And of course, if we do not have a head target, then simply set everything to 0. And right hand target, left hand target, if these are assigned, okay, set the weight, set the position. This is the editor, we want to have it enabled, so that means we will have it 1, we will have the weight to 1, and just copy the rotation from what we have into our targets. Okay, this is very simple because it only has to work on the editor. Inside the actual game we do a lot more. Now, we basically seen everything that the weapon creator needs to work, so let's actually see the weapon creator. We have also a weapon instance which has also a weapon, and when I want to init a weapon, it's going to take everything that this has and create this based from here. Before I click save weapon, we are using this. If I click save weapon, it copies all of this, it takes values from in here and creates a new prefab. Okay, let's see the weapon creator now. And okay, our buttons, or poor man's buttons, which we're going to use. And on update, okay, it's if it doesn't have a weapon instance, of course, it's going to find it. And we call this from our buttons, which whenever we turn a boolean true, it's going to call the the function it needs. It's not something special. Okay, and for example, if we want to create a key, we need to also pass the animator script, or the editor animator. Okay, very simple. We're not going to go into this function that much. You can see that it's not really anything. These are the booleans and the references we need. So let's see the actual functions. When we want to create a model, basically we go and look into our references if we have any other ones, and simply destroy them. And we need to use destroy immediate because we are inside the editor. And then we're going to do a for loop. And for 2, we only need this to run 2 times, so we're creating a new game object from the character model we assign over here. The target position will be hard-coded to 0 unless you are the second guy, so that you will be placed towards the left. Okay, we assign the position, and on our model references we assign the game object, and we find an animator, because these are character models, they should have an animator. Then we assign the runtime animator controller. The anim overrides, if we go into the weapon controller references, you will see that we have basically 3. We only need 2. First one will be the aiming, the other one will be the idle run, it's not really necessary, so we only basically need aiming and idle. Aiming and idle, the first guy that gets created, the second guy that gets created. Okay, simple enough. We add then a component of animator editor. We find it and assign it into our references so that we can access it later. We will always know that the first one will be the aiming guy and the second one will be the idle guy. We add the component for the bone helpers. We just simply initializing over here so that we do not have to go and do it by hand. Okay, and again save the references. And for the first guy, which we know is the aiming, we're simply going to go and enable everything to true. And we're going to call scene view repaint all so that it actually goes and repaints the scene so we actually see our models. Okay, create models. Create AK handles, as you can see. If we have any previous one, then we simply destroy them. Otherwise, we create two new game objects. And if the references AK parent is null, then we go and create another game object into our references. We're just going to call it AK solder helper. And if the target is not null, then we're going to go and place it into the actual solder position. And this has to do with the actual solder position, not the position with the offset. We assign that later. And yeah, if the references mguide is not null, then we simply destroy that. We're going to create a new one. We have a prefab mguide, which is basically just a stretched out box. Okay, mguide is this. It's nothing really major. It just loads mguide as a game object from the resources. And actually, I don't think I've made this into a prefab because I had this beforehand. Okay, if you do not want to create them from a prefab, then you can simply just create them over here and just drop them in here. So let's do this for good measure. And remember, because we are using the mguide, because we are using strings, okay, the name must be the same. Instantiate the prefab, assign the local position to be the same. It will start the same as the solder position, and we can place it from there. Okay, assign the reference. The head target, if it's not null, destroy the previous one. We simply destroy the previous ones because there's no telling if they were already destroyed or where they are. Okay, so it doesn't even matter because this is also in the editor. So yeah, we do not care about performance at this point because yeah, it's only for us. And we basically create a new primitive. Okay, I just went with spheres, change the name, parent it under the AK parent, place it somewhere. These are entirely irrelevant. Of course, you want to have the scale lowered, otherwise you're going to have a big sphere inside your scene, which is not going to be that helpful. And then we run a for loop for the IK handles. Okay, lower the scale. These are I just went with capsules. We have our targets, and yeah, if target is null, then it's simply going to place them wherever. Otherwise, it can go and try and find either the left hand or the right hand position. Okay, and then it's going to destroy their colliders because this also adds a collider into the primitive, which it's not something we use. Or yeah, since this is the enter, you might not even you might want to keep it. It won't really matter. Okay, then we parent it under the IK parent. So this is the actual important part, is that they need to be into the local position or be parented under the solder, because this is the stuff we want to use. The left hand, in this one, as I said in the weapon, how to add the new weapon video, is entirely is mostly just for this one, for this scene, as I said. Okay, we're still going to save the position and rotation, but we're not going to use this. And then we assign the other stuff. Okay, we go into the editor, animator editor, and assign the newly created references, the head target, enable head target. Okay, assign the right hand target and the left hand target. Left hand will be the AK handles the first one, and the right hand will be the second one, and we enable everything else, and we also assign the solder. Okay, so you can see that it's not really, it's mostly just creating new game objects and assign them where we need them. And this will be again the same for the FPS camera placer and the bullet spawner. It's basically just creating a primitive, deleting the collider, placing them somewhere so that we can, move them around. And the important thing is they need to be parented under the AK parent. Okay, it's fairly simple. After that, just do a repaint all and set dirty. If you want to, just pause and write all of these, but again, they are not really necessary. You can do anything you want or write anything you want over here. Just make sure they are parented under the AK parent. So this is how we create the AK handles. Create secondary AKs. Well, guess what? It's almost exactly the same as the above. Okay, but we assign them onto the secondary. Okay, we have the secondary AK parent, which is basically the right shoulder of the second guy on the idle. And it's exactly the same, so I'm just going to go slowly. You can see that it's pretty much a copy paste, but we have assigned it instead of the AK shoulder. We assign it and parent it under the secondary parent. And we also do not need anything that has to do with the aiming, anything like that. It only has to work with the left hand and right hand target. Okay, and we have and we only need to basically enable the left hand, since for the idle we do not want to enable anything that has to do with the right hand. Okay, so leave it like that. Now, when we want to save, which is basically the most important thing we need to do. Okay, we create a new class of a weapon, and if our weapon instance is null, then of course we go and find it, and we assign the weapon and the weapon instance. We start from here, and this is going to be the new weapon, and this is the weapon we're going to copy from. So weapon ID, whatever we have on the weapon. Model prefab, whatever we have on our current weapon. Weapon stats, we're going to create a new class of our weapon stats, and we're going to save everything you see over here. So for example, the aim guide offset. Okay, the aim guide minus the transform position of the right shoulder of the first guy. Main hand position, again the local position of the right hand helper. Off hand position aim and rotation aim, again the local position and the local rotation. Okay, we store this, we won't use this one, we're going to use this one. Now, for the idle position, it gets a little bit trickier because we want the left hand AK, or the position we want, will be parented under the actual weapon. So that means we cannot just get the local position, because the local position, especially this one, is not it's not under the AK shoulder, but we need to calculate it to be under the under the weapon. The easiest way to calculate the position is to basically calculate it from the right hand helper instead of the actual model. So the model can be whatever, can be rotated to anywhere, but we're only going to care with with saving basically the position from the right hand. Yeah, this might be a little bit more confusing, but let's see this. So what we're going to do is store the previous parent, the left hand AK had. Okay, 0 is the left hand. Then we're going to find the helper for the right hand from the second guy. Then we're going to set it to parent it under the right hand. So we're basically taking the left hand helper, parent it under the right hand, and now we can save the local position and the local rotation. Okay, and then we store it back to the previous parent. Okay, in short, what it does is, instead of getting this, finding the weapon over here, okay, and drag and dropping it over here, saving it, and then putting it back up, okay, we just did all this automatically. And this has to do with how the AK actually works, and we save it from over there because in the actual game that's where the left hand AK placer is going to be, because it's going to help it not, basically because the AK is based on the rotation of the right hand, so when you're going to rotate and to aim, your left hand might drift off. Okay, so we want to avoid that, and that's why we are using it this way. Now, head target position, again the local position that we have into our head target. Same for the bullet spawn position, same for the FPS camera offset. Like, the whole logic is very simple. It's very it's very simple, because it's just basically taking information from all of this, from all the helpers, and just saving them. Okay, like all this time we're just simply saving either local position or local rotation. Okay, we're going to create a new class of the weapon stats, and we're going to use from statics class copy weapon stats from weapon instance. Okay, so we're going to update this class with this with the class we have just saved. So the new weapon stats is what we are actually going to have into our new prefab. Now we're making a backup, so basically we're creating a new game object. Okay, we change the name, we add a component of weapon instance, and we assign the weapon instance to be what we have into over here, into our weapon. We save the model position. Again, we also save the actual model prefab, model position, model rotation, model scale, the animation set, the holster position. Okay, if there is actually a holster model instance, then it's going to save the position and rotation and scale from that holster model instance. Okay, and then you have successfully saved your weapon. It's fairly simple. It's actually very simple. It's not something that you might I don't believe you have a problem with this. It's just, as I said, local position or local rotation. The only tricky parts are this, the left hand, because we need to parent it first under the right hand and then save its position, and the aim guide offset, which is basically, it's not even that complicated, it's just a subtraction. Save weapon, and then init weapon when we initialize a weapon. So basically what it does, we destroy any previous model instances, we create a new model prefab, we call this, so yeah, place helper on bones, we pass, this has to do with place helper on bone, yeah, it creates a helper on the right hand for the first animator. We have our bone helper, okay, and then we set up the rotation for our model instance. We basically initialize it somewhere. The only important thing is to be parented under the helper. We have the local position, we just initialize it as 0. We set up into our references our weapon model instance. The secondary model instances, then we destroy anything if we have on the secondary model instance. We again create a new model, we instantiate a new model, we create a new helper for the second model, we get the bone, we initialize it again, okay. If into our instance we say that we have a holster, then we simply destroy if we had anything else before, okay, and we create a new model prefab or the new prefab. We find and create a new helper bone for our holster bone. We find the holster bone and initialize it over there. Okay, the important thing again is to parent it under the correct helper and to also assign the reference. And that's how you initialize the weapon. Initialize weapon on secondary is when you first go over here and set up the weapon. Init weapon on secondary, okay, it's just going to fix this, takes the position from all of this and places this on the other guy. To load the weapon, you also need to first instance to load, okay. You need to have that assigned. Animator editor, it's going to find the aim animator, weapon instance, and it's going to see if there is any, if there aren't any AK hands, then it's going to create them, then weapon instance, and then it's basically taking everything we have just saved and placing them back into the position we have saved. So, okay, for the right hand, it goes, and this is actually not the right hand, is this? Yeah. Landscape, behavior. Yeah, no, this is the correct one. Okay. So, you know, take the position we have saved and apply it. Parent it under the correct helper. Have the correct rotation. Have the correct parent. For the second guy, do exactly the same. Okay. Very simple. Local position, local Euler angles. Initialize the weapon and update the model. So init weapon is going to create it with the default values we have seen right here, which is basically nothing, and then it's going to go and update their position, model rotation, model scale. Okay, if there is a holster model instance, then update the position too. Otherwise, you know, continue, and you have your solder position, so it also updates the M guide offset, places it at the correct position, and also for the FPS camera placer and the bullet spawner, and then simply repaint your scene. That's simple. Place camera to FPS, okay, get your camera or the main camera you have into your scene and finds the FPS camera placer and sets up at 0 and then repaints all. And you can also, in case you forgot to assign, near clip plane should be 0.1. So this is basically the whole thing with a weapon creator. Okay, it might seem a little bit confusing or advanced, however it's like it's really the easiest stuff you can actually do. Okay, so you have your weapon creator, and you can update, you can change the models, you can create your weapons, save them, and then you will get this game object, which is a clone of this instance with everything and the information we have set up from over here. Okay, and we are here, and yeah, so that's it. It's very simple. Go check out the video that has to do with how to create a new weapon, and of course you should probably have seen that first before this one, because over there is how all of this is are basically used. And after you create the prefab, of course, as you will see in that video, you can come over here and change all this. So you will notice that we skip updating some of these values because we actually do not do anything with them in here. So for example, turn speed, the speed controller, okay, the recoil, all stuff, they will just have a default value, and if you want to tweak them or change them, then you can simply do it from the prefab. And of course you need to also add it into the resources manager list. Okay, this is it. We are over an hour, so I'm going to end this one over here. With the same logic, we will also do the extras creator. And the extras creator is basically you have an item instance, extras references, and this is the extras creator. Of course, it's far more simpler than the weapon creator because you only have to worry about saving one item. Okay, let's not make this any more difficult. Let's end this, and we will see everything else on the next videos. So like, subscribe, and if you like the work we're doing over here and you want to see it continued, of course, especially because this project is one reason is that we have done so much on this project is that it's I think my most popular series, and it's really a lot of people have supported this series. Okay, and that's why I can actually work on it a lot more. So if you also want to support me and the series or any other series, okay, then you can do so on Patreon, where we will also be able to watch videos earlier than they go live on the channel. And you can also support me on Gumroad by buying a project or two. Okay, this one included. The climb system, of course, it's its own project, and you can pick any other project you like. So I'll see you next time.